Hi, I'm Avalon Starlight, and you are listening to the Rebel Unicorns podcast. This season, we are diving deep into what being an empath in business actually looks like. Listen each week as I share tips and tricks to master your empath energy, as well as sharing incredible guests who have created successful businesses by claiming their empath title. Are you ready? Let's get our Rebel on. Hey, Rebel Unicorns. I'm so excited to dive a little deeper into being an empath in business and what that really looks like, feels like, and is the experience of. And today's episode, I'm sharing my personal empath story, which even as I'm going into it, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to say looking back, because of course, everything makes sense now. But when I was growing up, nothing made sense about being an empath. I mean, I feel pretty blessed that I believe that I was guided spiritually through the process of figuring it out. So I had some pretty awesome spirit guides or divine team involved in supporting me and making some big decisions. And I also trusted my intuition a lot of the time when I was growing up. But I did not know that I was an empath until about 6 years ago. And in the interim, before I actually knew that I could work with energy, I was worked by energy. Oh man, was I worked by energy. And so I'm going to kind of go through some of the experiences that I had growing up that, looking back, I can say, of course, this was me being an empath and not knowing that I was an empath. And so I think back to where it really kind of hit was when I was really young. I would automatically gravitate to those who were in need, those who were sad, those who were hurt, those who felt broken. I was the one who everybody would talk to, tell their deepest secrets to, but I was always the one that would gravitate towards those people, because I wanted them to feel better, because I could sense or feel. And I'm talking young here, people. I'm talking from the age that I can remember having memories, like 4 or 5, for the rest of my life, really. And so, but at that age, you want to go, if there's a hurt, anything, I was beside it. I wanted to make everything better. And having grown up in a house where there was mental illness, I also went into, this is why I have the hypervigilance as well. I wanted to be so conscious of where the emotions were of my family and how I could make sure that I was not disrupting or disturbing anything or anyone, to ensure that the household would maintain its highest vibrational frequency, so that the people that I loved would feel safe, would feel secure, and that they wouldn't hurt anymore. I remember being really young, so again, grade 7 and younger, and my mom would go through episodes of sadness, and I would take all the money I would get for Christmas or my birthday, and I would go to the store and I would buy her trinkets and gifts just so I could get like a hit of what I would call dopamine. But it wasn't. It would just so that when I would give her something and she would feel that burst or that little enlivened state of energy, I would also feel that. And that would feel like love to me. I would feel like, oh, good, my mom knows that I love her because I was able to create that emotion or that frequency. And again, I didn't know it at the time, but I can remember so vividly. I used to put on shows when she was going to bed at night. If she was feeling a little low and I could sense it, I would do these 1-act plays, which I thought I was hilarious. Let's be very clear. And I would do like comedy and dancing and singing, and just couldn't handle it anymore and kicked me out of her room. But I always knew when I was leaving her room, I left her in a different state than when I went in. This translated later into high school. I'm moving into my high school years. And I thought everybody in school hated me. I would say this is true for grade 7 and 8 too, but really distinctively in high school. It just was I felt like I had to walk down the halls, nose to the floor, And I just couldn't make eye contact with people because it felt like when I was making eye contact with people that they were just telling me how much they did not like me through their gaze. And of course, this wasn't true. And I know now that what I was picking up on was any discontent or disharmony that they were feeling about anyone, and actually believing that it was directed at me. So, we're talking about pubescent teens here and all the angst that we all go through. And I literally thought all of that was about me. Holy selfishness, I get that. But as somebody who was that energetically open to receiving all of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, it was like being bombarded all the time. I remember thinking when I was in high school, I'm walking out of high school with not a single friend because nobody in high school liked me. I didn't even graduate high school because it was so intense. What I did find in high school was a way to numb myself from feeling. So by the time I was in grade 11, I actually moved out of the house when I was 16 years old to be on my own because it was just too much for me energetically at home, but it was also too energetic for me at school. And so I quickly learned that if I could numb myself with drugs and alcohol, that I wouldn't have to feel. And, I had stopped drinking when I turned 40, and I moved across country recently, and I had a couple drinks, and one night I got a little buzz on, and I just remember thinking in my head, I have no thoughts right now, and I have no feelings. And I'm glad I had this experience. I've stopped drinking again because I don't like the way it makes my body feel. And also I don't like the way that it works with my spiritual gifts. But in that moment, it was like such a clarifying moment I needed to have to say like, oh, it's so true. This is what it feels like when my chatter in my head has stopped and I literally cannot feel anybody's emotions around me. And I couldn't even feel my own. And I was like, this is why I started drinking and doing drugs when I was 16 years old, was because it numbed me enough to be able to feel like I could function in society in some form or some way. Which is not a positive thing to say. I'm not saying to do drugs and drink as a way to numb yourself. This was a way that I didn't have a teacher that could help guide me or understand what I was going through. And I do actually believe that my biological family has extreme spiritual gifts, and they just, again, we don't have people in the world these days, or we're getting there now because it's becoming more and more of an open conversation about energy and working with energy and having spiritual gifts or magical powers, and, what to do and how to nurture them and find yourself in a community that can actually help support you in embracing it and activating and opening it up safely. But at the time that didn't exist. At least it didn't exist that I could remember growing up. So I thought something was wrong with me. And so the numbing and the drugs and the alcohol helped. And I did that for some time. And again, I drank pretty steadily on and off until I was 40 years old. And when that stopped, that's when my capacity to work in energy really got super strong and heightened. But in the interim, one of the things that I learned really early on as well was what I couldn't do energetically. And I think that this is a strong part of being an empath as well. I would take jobs and I would work in different places. And if it did not energetically align with me, I couldn't do it. I mean, I went through jobs like some people go through boyfriends. Technically, I went through boyfriends as quickly as I went through jobs as well when I was younger. But at the time, if a job didn't feel good, I would just end up in severe panic and anxiety. And it would be a thing that I just couldn't physically get myself to that job. I worked at a restaurant once, and it was just such a negative, low vibrational place that I just remember like making myself sick. But it wasn't just me I was like, again, taking on the density and the emotional state of everybody that I was working with. So in my 20s, early 20s, I went to the YMCA's employment services and did a program that would help me place myself in a job that would be good for me, that would be better for me energetically. And so I went to this program and found out that I was meant to be in counseling, in teaching, in coaching, in fitness, all of these things. But it was always in service to helping people feel better and have a better life. And so I had just become a mom at around that time. And I started working at the YMCA on the fitness floor, and I would just clean the machines and do all this. But this was my journey into really getting clear about the human body, which would ultimately lead to, it's all I've done for over 2 decades is work in the human body. So at that time, I started by being just working on the fitness floor and teaching fitness classes. And oh my freaking God, I was addicted immediately. I mean, you want to talk about raising people's emotional states? I mean, get me on stage, give me a microphone, let me pump people up and watch them shift into higher states of being. Joy, happiness, releasing all of these happy hormones. I couldn't believe that and again, I'm talking as I now know it, right? Back then, I was just like, I am meant to be a fitness instructor. Now I can see that I was meant to be a fitness instructor because I could actually notice the vibration and the emotion shift in the room. So I stayed in that job for a while, and then I ventured out. I went back to university as a mature student. I wanted to get into kinesiology because this was clearly my path in my field. And I ended up getting pregnant with my second child. But while I was in school at that time, actually, I was in school prior to, no, it was around that time. Yeah. So I'm like 26 at this point. I took a personal training certification course at the university. Now I got pregnant, and if you've ever, like as a highly sensitive person, I had biology in one of my courses and I was pregnant and I had to quit university because I couldn't even walk into the lab. I couldn't even go down the stairs to go into the lab because the smell of the lab was so intense that I just couldn't do it. But before I left, I ended up getting certified as a personal trainer. And when my second child was born, I went into personal training in a fitness facility, and that was it. I thought I had landed in exactly what I was meant to do because of the fact that, I could walk into the gym and people were in glorious mood. Like, people will go to the gym to feel good, right? They go there to feel better, to change their lives, to experience different things. And as a personal trainer, I mean, basically you're not just coaching the physical body. You're coaching all states. And during that time that I was there, I was obsessed with learning more and more about the human body. I wanted to know about the muscular system, the skeletal system, the hormonal system, the nutritional system. I wanted to know how everything worked. And from there, that led me into working in private schools, teaching fitness classes and nutrition courses. It led me, teaching fitness classes in different universities. It taught me, like, I was traveling into my city, anywhere that I could go, working in companies, helping their staff understand these things, anything that I could do to support people wanting to feel different, wanting to experience life in a higher vibrational state, in a higher emotional state. And again, I just thought I was really good at what I did. And I remember being in work one day and going in cranky to the gym that I worked at the time. And the manager pulled me aside and she said, "You need to change your mood." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because when you're in a good mood, the entire gym is in a good mood. But when you're in a bad mood, the entire gym is in a bad mood." And I was like, whoa, that feels like an intense statement to say to somebody. At the time, I was kind of taken aback and I didn't know how to respond to it because, again, I didn't know I was an empath, which through this series, we're going to talk about how it's not just about receiving in. We actually have the capacity to send energy out that can actually shift an entire room's worth of energy because we get to play on the receiving and the giving end of energy. And I was like, oh, that feels like a big responsibility that I would be responsible for an entire business's energy force. But I mean, 99% of the time I was pretty happy anyway. I danced around the gym, loved when a good playlist was on. So I stayed in that realm until I decided that I wanted to become a life coach because I was doing life coaching anyway. I didn't really actually care how hard my clients' fitness, we never did heavy weights. We always did foundational movements. I didn't necessarily go into making them become the most ripped humans in the land. But what I wanted them to feel was confident. What I wanted them to feel was successful. What I wanted them to feel was the highest success and pride that they could in themselves. And so when it became time and I left the fitness world, it was an immediate move into, I meant to do something like life coaching. And in 2016, that was when I started to fully understand that I was an empath. And when I left the fitness world and I didn't have my business yet together, so I took about a year of me playing with learning about reading Oracle cards. I got certified to read Oracle cards. I got certified to be a life coach. I started working in this one program, and this is when it really hit home for me. Was we did a practice where we were tuned in all over the world, and we had to lift our energy up out of our house and travel across and go to the other person and read their heart chakras. And I came back into my body and was talking to the person that I was paired up with. And she was just like, how did you know that? How did you know that that's how my heart chakra was feeling? And it was in this world, or in 2016 when I was in this world, that I finally went, oh my God, I'm an empath. This is why every time I went grocery shopping, I would have to come in and put my groceries on the table and go lay down on the couch for a bit before I could put them away, because I felt utterly exhausted from going to the grocery store. I'd have to rest myself, get myself back to a state, and then I would put my groceries away. It's why I would have a panic attack if I had to go to an event midway. I had to be the first person at any event, any party, and I'm talking like sports event, concerts, parties. I like to be the first person there so that the energy can fill up around me, so my system can raise into all the people's emotions that become present. Again, I didn't know this was happening at the time, but I can relate. And I also had to leave before it ended. I couldn't be in a swarm, being in a crowd like a sardine going from point A to point B with all of that energy. I would have panic attacks. It's why, I couldn't be in any negative world. I could never work in corporate. I could never be in a job that had me, working for somebody that I didn't align with energetically, because I could feel what they were feeling. And so I would take on how they were actually thinking or feeling about their staff. I couldn't work in any business that was, heavy or dense. So as much as I loved being a server and I was really good at being a server, there's a density. Like when people are upset because of their food or for this or for that, I would take that on. And there was too many people for that. So it was really early that I got into entrepreneurship. It was, I would say, in my early 30s, I was personal training on my own because I was in control of the state. I was working in my house by my mid 30s in order to maintain where I was working. And I tended to always work either teaching fitness classes with only small groups of people. And I'd learned to not be in large crowds for anything unless I was drunk. Then I didn't feel everybody's emotions. So oftentimes if I was going out, I would have to drink enough that I could go out and be in these crowds without feeling the panic or the anxiety. And then that would numb me enough that I could be able to stand being at concerts or at events. And, I used to think that I was just that girl. I was the party girl. I was the one that everybody wanted to invite because I tended to drink more than I should have. And so I was super fun. But I realize now the pre-drinks were what I required to numb the thoughts and the emotions enough that I could actually get myself to the place. And then once I was there, in order to maintain that I did not feel anybody's stuff, I would continue drinking, and I didn't have the, thing that says stop drinking. That was also what I didn't have. And so that was problematic up until I was about 40 years old. But when I reached a place of learning that I was an empath, so once this occurred, immediately my body wanted to stop drinking. Immediately it wanted to not only feel what was happening on the outside of me, it wanted to feel deeper into what was happening on the inside of me. And I'm just going to kind of end this episode because there's just so many things that I want to talk about from this point on about, ways to protect yourself, ways to work in putting your energy out or protecting others from you being in a negative state. So, even when things with my partner weren't great near the end of our marriage before our separation, nobody knew. And they would say, how did you show up all the time so much? Because they'd be empaths and they wouldn't be able to feel me. And it's because we can control what we are also putting out into the world. It's a very powerful thing if you want to be on stages and you want to actually present your speech or what you want to talk about in a way that people can feel it. You can send that out vibrationally into the crowd as well. It's a very, very cool, powerful gift that you have. And so I will leave it here at this point where, Spirit and I got involved very heavily in 2016. That's when I started to meditate and I started to hear the voice of angels and guides and, a supportive divine team in my head. And since then, everything that you're going to learn in this podcast has been the practices that I have put in place in order that I can support more humans in having an even deeper experience in their businesses and their lives through this incredible, incredible gift of working with energy. So I'm excited. The next guest that we have is Jen Eden. This episode will blow your mind. She's going to bring in the concept of boundaries, and I'm going to do my next solo episode next week on boundaries to really help guide and support you on this very first step of supporting your empath experience. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to share this episode, please do. I'm so excited to share even more information about how powerful you are and how much impact you can make in the world as an empath. Wow, that episode was mind-blowing. I hope you had as many ahas listening to it as I had recording it. I would love to see the Rebel Unicorns podcast spread far and wide across the globe, across the universe. So if you want to share it on your social media with something that you found impactful, leave a review, send it to a friend. It would be so deeply appreciated. Also, a little side note, I did recently change my name. I downloaded a year and a half ago that my name was Avalon Starlight. It was previously my birth name was Tamara Arnold. And if you're interested in learning what your Rebel Unicorn house is, there's a quiz for that. Think Harry Potter, except you're sorted into how you are impacting the world with your stardust and what energy you're here to shift and change. You can find out your Rebel Unicorn house at www.tamaraarnold.ca/quiz. Let me know, tag me in social media, send the quiz out, and join the Rebel Unicorns Facebook group to be in a community of like-minded spiritual entrepreneurs who understand that when you shift your energy, you transform your business.